never thought a single text could make. My world shift. The message blinked on. My phone at 9:17 p.m. Simple yet devastating. Going with my ex. I stared at it for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the screen, wanting to reply, but unsure what words could possibly fix what had already been broken. My name is Matthew, and I've been with Emily for almost 4 years. We've shared apartments, vacations, late-night conversations that lasted until sunrise. I thought we had a bond that no one could unravel, but that text felt like a sudden severing of every thread we'd carefully woven together. Emily had always been spontaneous, the kind of person who could make a mundane Tuesday feel like an adventure it was part of. What drew me to me, but sometimes that spontaneity bordered on recklessness. I'd noticed over the past few months that she had been distant, quick to brush off conversations about our future, distracted when we were together, occasionally checking her phone with that secretive glint in her eyes. I tried to ignore it, thinking I was overreacting. I always thought trust meant giving someone space, not holding them accountable for every fleeting thought. But that text wasn't a fleeting thought. It was a declaration, a decision. Emily had told me she needed time to meet her ex, and she didn't even wait for me to respond. The words echoed in my mind. Don't worry, I won't be there. It was meant to reassure me, to soften the blow, but all it did was pierce through the calm I tried to maintain. I pictured them together, laughing in ways we used to laugh, touching in ways I hadn't felt from her. In weeks, maybe months. My heart wasn't screaming in anger. It was quietly breaking like a slow leak from a faucet. I couldn't reach. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I sat on the edge of my couch, trying to piece together every subtle shift in her behavior, the dinner she'd canceled, the whispered phone calls, the sudden trips out with friends she never invited me to. Everything fell into place. My mind, trained by years in law enforcement, started noticing patterns I'd ignored before. I wasn't paranoid. I was finally seeing the map. She had been drawing without my knowledge. And while part of me ached to confront her, a larger part of me understood that confrontation would only push me further from clarity. I needed to watch, to observe, and to decide on my own terms how this chapter would close. The next morning, I went about my routine as if nothing had happened. I brewed my coffee, scrolled through emails, and pretended the text hadn't hit me like a freight train the night before. Emily noticed, of course. She walked into the kitchen with that bright, teasing smile she always wore when she thought she could distract me. "Morning," she said, stretching like nothing had changed. But I could see it. In her eyes, the anticipation, the little thrill of seeing how I would react. I didn't give her the reaction she wanted. I didn't ask who she was going with, or why, or what time. I simply nodded, took my coffee, and left for work. As I drove, I replayed the text again and again in my mind, analyzing it. Her ex. Why now? Why, without even mentioning it in the weeks leading up to it. The answers didn't matter yet. What mattered was that she assumed I would, accepted that I would silently watch her slip away without any consequence. I decided I wouldn't, not in anger, not in haste, but with precision. Over the next few days, I observed subtly. I noticed the pattern she fell into, the messages that she quickly deleted, the little smirks when her phone buzzed, the way her tone would change when I entered the room. It wasn't about proving her wrong. It was about understanding the truth. I needed clarity before taking any step. That might end everything we had built. By the evening of her planned outing, I knew exactly where she was going. I didn't follow her recklessly, didn't make a scene. Instead, I waited, patiently, strategically, because the truth has a way of revealing itself when the other person thinks they're in control. Around 8 p.m., I arrived, near the cafe where she had said she'd meet someone. I stayed in the shadows, unseen, watching as she laughed, leaning in closer than she ever leaned in with me, talking with gestures that were intimate, familiar, and entirely foreign to me. My chest tightened, but I didn't move. I wasn't there to yell or punish. I was there to witness the reality she thought she could hide. It was surreal. The person she was with wasn't just her ex. It was a version of herself I hadn't fully recognized. Carefree, bold, completely unapologetic. And as she glanced around, expecting to see someone, waiting, maybe me, there was no one. That empty space, the absence of me, said everything. She had assumed that absence meant permission, that I wouldn't see, wouldn't notice, wouldn't care. And in that moment, I realized the power wasn't in confrontation. The power was in my presence, quiet, observing, letting her actions speak louder than any words I could have shouted. When Emily finally noticed me standing across the street, she froze. Her smile faltered, the laughter in her eyes dimmed, and suddenly she looked smaller, uncertain. I didn't walk toward her. I didn't call out her name. I simply stayed where I was, letting the distance between us speak for me. In that silence, the truth hit her harder than any argument could have. She had chosen a moment of thrill, thinking I wouldn't notice. And now she faced the quiet judgment she had never considered. I turned and walked away, not in rage, not in despair, but in clarity. I had given her every ounce of trust one could, and she had traded it for a temporary excitement. Seeing it unfold firsthand wasn't about humiliation. It was about realization. And as I walked to my car, I felt a strange sense of relief, like the weight of uncertainty had finally lifted. Though my betrayal had been confirmed, but I was still whole. My heart was bruised, yes, but it wasn't broken. Over the next days, Emily tried to reach out, texting me apologies, excuses, half-hearted justifications. It didn't mean anything, she said. I just wanted to see him. I read the messages, but didn't reply. Each one reminded me that her Priorities had shifted long before that. Evening, and I didn't need to tell her I knew. The knowledge alone was enough. I had seen the truth, and that was all the closure I required. By the end of the week, I packed a small bag and moved, temporarily, to my friend's apartment. I needed space to think, to breathe, to untangle the emotions that had knotted inside me. And in that space, I realized something important. Betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet text, a seemingly innocent choice, a small lie repeated enough times that it feels normal. But the moment you see it clearly, when you confront it in your mind, even without confrontation in person, that's when freedom begins. Weeks later, Emily and I met briefly too. Discussed the relationship I didn't raise, the text or the cafe. I simply told her, calmly, that I needed someone who valued my presence as much as I valued theirs. She didn't argue, she didn't beg, she just nodded. And for the first time, I felt a complete sense of finality. Walking away was harder than staying, but it was also cleaner, sharper, and necessary. I didn't need revenge or confrontation. I needed clarity. And in claiming that, I had taken back the respect and dignity she had threatened to discard.